For years now, the Flash's fandom has said the same thing over and over again. The show hasn't been good since Season 2, it hasn't recaptured the magic of the first two seasons, and the current season is the worst one yet by far. Now, this is something that I never really agreed with. I always thought Season 3 was a lot better than people gave it credit for. I mean, looking back, it seems like most people do now agree. Season 3 wasn't that bad. In fact, it was pretty good. I always thought Season 4 was the best looking season of The Flash, and it has my favorite episode, Enter Flash Time. And while Season 5 definitely looks pretty bad, and it has a bad villain, the season-long storyline isn't bad at all. However, now that we're in Season 7, I have to agree with what most people are saying, that this is the worst season of The Flash, but not only that, I find it to be so much worse than anything The Flash has ever given us before the crisis, that it's utterly unwatchable. Everything up until the crisis was at least watchable. Some of it wasn't great, some of it was great, but most of it was something that I did enjoy, and I was attached to the characters. But ever since the crisis happened, the second half of Season 6, and especially the god-awful season that we're having right now, Season 7, I have trouble getting through every single episode. I'm having trouble getting through even certain scenes. I've skimmed through a lot of it. And the main reason for this, or there are a couple main reasons, but I think the biggest one is the terrible, terrible supporting cast. So I no longer care about really a single character on the show except for Barry Allen and maybe Iris West, just because she's important to the Flash's universe. But in terms of the show itself, it's really just Barry Allen, which is detrimental to a show that really likes to put its main character on the sidelines, really likes to focus on the supporting cast, which is just awful for the show. And this also includes the characters who were, at least at one point, fan favorites and beloved characters like Cisco Ramon, who was amazing in Seasons 1 and 2. He had no connection to the Flash in the comics, but they really connected him to it. They really made him a staple of the Flash, at least in this world. But ever since Season 3 ended, Cisco has done literally nothing interesting, and while his heartfelt goodbye in Season 7 was well done, that episode really should have came out in Season 4 or something, because ever since then he's done nothing interesting, and it just feels like he's around for the sake of just the fact that he's been around from the beginning. This also goes for Caitlin, but instead of doing nothing interesting, her storylines have been just awful since Season 3. I love the idea of Caitlin, one of Barry's best friends, turning evil and turning into Killer Frost because of that dynamic and that emotional impact that can have. But then they went back on that, and in Season 4 she became a good guy, and ever since then, this is an idea that I've hated. And she's always been a character, basically ever since Season 3, that the writers just keep on running out of things to do for her, so they keep on creating new drama, new storylines. Like recently in Season 7, this has been the worst ever. They've given Frost a lot to do in Season 7, and I don't think that's a good thing. First, they split Caitlin and Frost up, which has been really weird, but also that's definitely not the worst thing. The worst things are the trial of the Killer Frost storyline, which, really, the CW had the gall to lecture us and the people of the show and the characters in the show about giving people second chances when they fired Hartley Sawyer from the show because of something that he tweeted 10 years ago. It's honestly so ridiculous, but that's not even the worst thing we got from Frost this season. The worst thing is Chillblaine, which is the most sexualized character in the Arrowverse ever, somehow, and his relationship / weird romance that he's had with Frost, it's so creepy, it's so weird. I don't understand what they're doing with the character. They had this idea to make her a good guy in Season 4, and ever since then, they've just done the weirdest things ever, and I don't think that was ever a good idea in the first place. I mean, they took a character named Killer Frost, who is a killer, and they thought, yeah, let's make that character a good guy. Captain Cold makes sense, I guess. He's always had a code. He doesn't have Killer in his name. Other characters make sense, but Killer Frost, I mean, come on. Let's be real here. This never would have worked, and it really doesn't. And Season 7 has had the worst of it so far. So Ralph was unjustly kicked off the show, which really pissed me off because it was just so unfair to Ralph and Sue's actors because they really were promised much more than they end up getting. But maybe it's for the best. Maybe these characters would have fell victim to what the rest of the cast has fell victim to, which is just turning into bad characters. But I do think they had a lot of potential, maybe even in their own spin-off show, but it really makes the CW look even worse than it already does because they have all these storylines of villains or bad people turning good. Even Ralph himself was a crooked cop who turned into a hero. but then they have the goal to kick somebody off the show because of something he tweeted 10 years ago. It's something that really, really pissed me off. I never really talked about it in a video, but it's something that I really I don't respect the CW at all. And that's one of the reasons. But anyway, there's also Joe, who hasn't done anything interesting in years, and Cecile, who is pretty annoying, and she is super overused. Like, she should not have nearly as many storylines or screen time as she does. And her appearance rate should really just be relegated to whenever there's a trial or whenever we see Joe at home, and that's really it. And she definitely should have never gotten powers, because why the hell does she have powers? Then we get to two characters whose existences baffle me, which is Chester and Allegra. Chester is obviously supposed to be a replacement for Cisco. He's always behind the monitor, coming up with the plans. He's the nerdy one. He makes all these pop culture references. He's a bit awkward. He's just Cisco 2.0, but Cisco, like I said, he didn't really have anything to do past Season 4. His existence also didn't really need to happen past Season 4. So to replace him in Season 7, or I guess Season 6, with a worse version of the character, it makes no sense whatsoever, and Chester has really added nothing to the show. He's, in fact, worse in the show, to the point where, I mean, you forget, like, important things about the character, because who the fuck cares about him? I remember scrolling through Reddit a couple weeks ago where somebody asked why Chester doesn't use his black hole powers, or could he use his black hole powers in this specific way, and it blew my mind, because I completely forgot about that. I completely forgot he has the black hole powers. Because, one, he never uses them, but also, two, because I don't give a crap about this character. I don't care about anything he's done or anything he ever will do. Then there's Allegra, who is even worse somehow. So I think we can all agree that Allegra is a pointless character, right? I mean, whenever she is on screen, she's just in the background doing nothing. There are a couple episodes where she just doesn't appear and nobody noticed because, I mean, it has the same effect of her just being in the background. She has no personal relationships that are interesting, no good dynamics that would bring any interest to the show, and her storylines are completely forgettable, which all came together to episode 14, Rayo de Luz, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is the lowest rated episode on IMDb ever. Despite the fact that, I mean, Love's a Battlefield is worse, it's just that at least that episode features Barry and Iris and all the other characters that we care about. This episode is not an episode of The Flash, it's an episode about Allegra, where, I mean, even inside the storyline, there's some bad acting, some bad effects, some bad writing, I mean, terrible writing, but, I mean, just the fact that it features Allegra, a character clearly nobody cares about, is why it's the lowest rated episode of the show ever on IMDb. Whenever there's a storyline involving one of the characters that doesn't directly involve Barry Allen, I tend to want to skip it, and I do skip it. Just look at the latest Godspeed episode. Everything that had to do with Allegra and her cousin and Caitlin working on her with the surgery, I skipped through all of that, and I don't feel like I missed anything. Anything to do with Frost and Chillblaine, I didn't skip it, but I cringed through it somehow. I managed to get through it despite it being some of the worst TV I've ever seen. And that was in one of the, what is generally considered the better episodes of Season 7, where so many people were like, oh, this is a return to form. But no, when 2 out of the 3 storylines are either things that you want to skip through or you cringe through, and then even the main storyline is not as good as it could be, that episode isn't good. The episode 15 at the Enemy at the Gates is not a good episode. It's just good for Season 7 somehow. And that really goes to show how awful Season 7 has been, how unwatchable the show is at this point. Now, I don't think that this would be as big of a problem. Like, again, if the supporting cast is better, obviously that would be very helpful, but also I think that if the supporting cast's role was diminished, if they had less storylines and Barry had more of a front and center role, then also the show would be better. But I don't think either of those things would solve the other big problem, which is the character of Barry Allen, and how 7 years in and 7 seasons in, he still feels like a sidekick. He still feels like he hasn't come into his own. Like in Season 1, it made sense. Harrison Wells was giving him all the pointers. Harrison Wells was experienced while he wasn't. But every season since then, it slowly became more and more annoying. Why does Barry not know what he's doing at this point? Why is he always taking advice from others? Why can he not come up with any of the plans on his own? And why is he in the field always having somebody in his ear? It really is highlighted by a show like Superman and Lois, where when Superman goes out into the field, he knows what he's doing. He never has anybody in his ear telling him what to do. But he knows what he's doing, and yeah, he has like 13 years on Barry in terms of experience. but I don't think 20 versus 7 is really that big of a difference, especially everything that Barry's gone through in the last 7 years. He should know what he's doing. He should be the one who's the leader. He should come up with the plans, but he just doesn't. And it really, really bothers me. It's always bothered me, like, ever since season, like, 3 or 4. He should have started doing this, but they can't get away from the same formula that they had in season 1, which is so dated for how many seasons we are into the show. This is also highlighted not only by Superman and Lois, but also by the second episode of Season 7, The Speed of Thought, which is easily the best episode so far, where Barry unlocks the ability Speed Thinking and finally starts acting like he should. There is the emotional detachment, but I don't think the emotional detachment needs to happen with the Speed Thinking, and they could just remove that and keep the Speed Thinking. He just has to learn how to master it and be an emotionally attached person. But with the Speed Thinking, he finally starts acting like he should. He's a genius, he's the one coming up with the plans, he knows what he's doing, he knows how to manipulate his powers so that he can really win and defeat anybody super easily. And that's when he really felt like the Flash. He felt like a powerful main character, but then they just took it away at the end of the episode because of the quote-unquote emotional detachment, which is like, I mean, come on, they finally hit the mark with how Barry should act and how he should be the Flash, and then they just threw it away, and the rest of the season, he starts acting again how he did previously, where he doesn't know what he's doing, which so pisses me off. Now, both of those things are also technically true for other seasons. Like, it is the worst ever in Season 7. The supporting cast has never been this bad, and Barry not being at his best is also never been as annoying. But there's one thing that is really exclusive to Season 7, which are the awful storylines that they chose to go with. It starts with the Mirror Monarch ending storyline, which is Corona. They weren't able to finish the last 3 episodes, 3 episodes I think it was, so they put it here. But I think that it is also connected to Season 6B. It's all just awful. Mirror Monarch was a terrible villain. But getting into Season 7 itself, what was supposed to be the first half of Season 7, the Force Quest storyline, I mean, anybody who's watched it knows how awful it was, how cringy it was. But, I mean, it's a storyline that was bad in the comics, so I don't understand why they wanted to adapt it. I remember reading it when the comics initially came out. I think it was like a little bit after the Godspeed storyline, like maybe like a couple months later or like a year later or something. But I remember reading it and thinking that this is like the worst the Flash comics have ever been. I read the entirety of the Flash run from the New 52 till Rebirth and then after Rebirth as well. So basically all of it. And the Force Quest, I can say, is easily the worst thing that the comics have done in the entirety of that run, which is like 10 years of comics. And it's just really Barry going around the world, finding these like avatars of the forces, and then going up against them individually, which, I mean, it's not good in the comics, but somehow they made it even worse on the show by adding this family dynamic. Barry and Iris start considering the forces their children because they technically made them with the power of their love, which is just, I mean, just that sentence is the cringiest thing ever. But the fact that they're calling them their children, they're like sacrificing the good and the safety of the entire city because they're their children. It's ridiculous. And like Psyche calls Barry dad, everyone calls them dad and mom. I mean, it's so weird. Who thought of this? Whose idea was this? I don't understand. It's so weird. That's really the best word to describe it. It's just so weird. And the Speed Force also wasn't really great. I mean, that's another thing. They kept on calling her Nora. That's also, it's so weird and so disrespectful to the real Nora Allen. And the fact that Barry starts going along with it, it's so out of character. Between the Force Quest arc and then the Godspeed one, there was like 4 or 5 filler episodes, which, I mean, there's a Seal episode, who cares? There's an Allegra episode, one of the worst episodes of the show ever, leaving just 4 episodes for the Godspeed arc. 4 episodes, that's less than a crossover event, that's less than Crisis on Infinite Earths, that's the same as Crisis on Earth X. 4 episodes for a villain that they've been teasing for like years. He debuted in 2016, and ever since then he's been the most requested character on The Flash, in my opinion. Then he finally appeared in a very disappointing episode in Season 5, but then they teased that that's not the end of the character. He returned for Season 6 in a really mysterious way, and finally, all that setup came to the ending of Season 7, where he's in 4 episodes, and August Hart didn't even appear in episode 15. The actual character is only going to appear in, at most, 3 episodes, and I know they're not continuing it into Season 8, because Season 8 will start with a crossover event, kind of, which has no room for Godspeed, I'm assuming. So, I mean, I don't understand the structure here. Obviously, the coronavirus affected it a lot, but I really only think the coronavirus affected the first couple episodes where they had to make it the Mirrorverse episodes, but then that really left like 15 episodes where they could have had like 7 for the Force Quest if they needed to do the Force Quest. If they want to do filler episodes, then just like 1. Any more than that is like ridiculous. And then that leaves 7 or 8 episodes for the Godspeeds, which is like not even enough for what they deserve, and they got 4 episodes in the end. And even then, episode 15 dedicated a lot of its screen time to Allegra and Ultraviolet and Chillblade and Frost, and it's like, where the hell has this show gone? What are they doing? I don't understand, and I know I said that a lot in this video, but it really baffles me how the show can go from being so good, like in the first half of Season 6, to so bad so quickly. So in summation, the supporting cast is awful. They take up more screen time than the main character does, and it is ridiculous. The main character also is completely incompetent compared to what he should be. The storylines are awful. The fact that they dedicate so much to filler is ridiculous, and the fact that they left Godspeed with just 4 is ridiculous as well. All of these things come together to make easily the worst season of The Flash so far, and I hopefully ever, but also one of the worst seasons in the Arrowverse. Definitely an F-tier season, on par with Arrow Season 4. Now, there are a couple episodes left in the season. I kind of enjoyed episode 15, just not nearly as much as I wanted to, but if the last couple episodes are good, and they do get me excited, then I will say that Season 7 is a bit better than Arrow Season 4, maybe a D-tier season. But as of right now, if the next couple episodes aren't good, which they probably will be just because they have Impulse and Godspeed and Excess and all those characters, but if it really falls flat, then this could be an F-tier season, the first one that The Flash has ever had. But is there a way to fix these problems? I definitely think there is, but I don't think they're going to. I think that they should make Barry more competent and not reliant on the supporting cast. That would obviously make Barry non-incompetent, obviously, but also it would shine less light on the awful supporting cast, so they would be less awful, but also you might as well improve the supporting cast as well. Cisco and Wells already left, so they should also get rid of Chester and Allegra and Frost and relieve the cast with really just the essentials: Barry, Iris, Joe, and all the other speedster characters that they could bring along, like Wally and Bart and Nora and any other speedster villains, because really, let's be honest here, we're here for the speedsters. The speedsters have always, and they always will be, the most interesting characters on the show. They have the most interesting powers. Visually, they look the coolest, and somehow they also end up being just the best written characters on the show as well. That's really what the show should have focused on from the beginning until the end, and I know the fandom complained about it in Season 3. The speedster villains have gotten out of hand. We've had too many of them. Savitar was 3 in a row. But I could confidently say that we, the Flash fandom, was wrong, and we want the speedsters back. Please. That being said, I do not think they're going to improve any of this just because of how mediocre episode 15 was. I don't think Eric Wallace knows what he's doing. I really don't think that he's ever going to improve the show. And if Season 8 is the final season, I don't think it's going to go out on as high of a high note that Arrow did, which is just such a shame. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below what you thought. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below what you think about Season 7. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's better than I give it credit for? Do you think it's even worse than I give it credit for somehow? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. So, thanks for watching. Goodbye.